It's So I am Grady McTavish, and this is Mr. Ryan Leewood, and we are doing a tech review of which product, Ryan?
The SARAMONIC SMARTRIG Plus.
SARAMONIC SMARTRIG Plus. And for those of you watching, I am really not a technical sort of dude. I don't really know about audio and how that really works and how that really changes, you know, hiss and whatnot. So I have a master right here of audio, of course.
Oh, you're too kind.
Shut the and a layman who doesn't really know a lot. So we'll see how this goes. So Ryan, describe to me, what does this do for the microphone, please?
Alright, well, the SMARTRIG, I don't know which camera to talk to. This is so awkward.
You should talk to that one, because then I can see your face.
Alright.
So,
I'm just going to keep this all in. The SMARTRIG processes your audio before it gets to your camera. So that's what a preamp does. The preamps built into your camera will process your audio for you. But because essentially cameras are made for photography and video, generally the preamps in the cameras are not as good as they should be, even though they're fairly inexpensive.
So basically, what would that, if you had a microphone and say it produced a lot of hiss when you recorded video, what does this do for, say, a hissy microphone like what we have here with the Rode Shocker mic?
Technically, the microphone can't hiss. The only hiss you can get is through background noise.
Mm-hmm.
The preamp is responsible for eliminating that hiss. It's essentially electrical noise. The better your preamp, the better your sound quality is going to be. You're going to get less hiss and more of that sweet, sweet dialogue.
Sweet, sweet nectar.
See me a crown.
We also have Owen Wilson on this show. If you.
Wow.
So, I've noticed there's a bunch of dials and little switches there. What, for example, what would this do? What would that do?
These, sorry for interrupting you, these are your gain controllers. I have this one set almost all the way up. Essentially, the higher this is, the lower your camera has to be.
Okay.
And because it's the camera that's responsible for the hissy noise, and this produces like no hiss whatsoever at its highest settings, you get the cleanest audio possible. So you can turn your camera gain all the way down, almost, and turn this almost all the way up, and you should get really clean, and you do get really clean audio.
Okay. What about the second switch here, Ryan?
This is, essentially, it's the same thing, but for your secondary channel. Because you've got a mono and a stereo switch, right? I don't know if you can see that, but there's a mono and a stereo switch right there. I have it set to mono at the moment, stereo, but you got two channels.
Yeah.
Your left and right. This just controls your right channel.
Oh, okay. Oh, Ryan, you're such a riot.
You're such a film riot.
Ow, sorry. So, let's talk about these inputs here. Because I would love to talk about them, because I don't know what they do.
Okay, well, they're fairly complicated, believe it or not. You have two 3.5 millimeter inputs, which are your standard microphone, headphone jack kind of inputs. And you've got your larger 1/4 inch. Yeah, that's a 1/4 inch, like inside the XLR jack, and you've got your two XLR jacks. So in total, you have 6 inputs. You can only use 4 at a time, but you can use 4 at a time. And if you want to take the input from both channels at the same time,
right?
You switch it over to stereo mode, and then you've got your selector for either side.
Right.
Your gain controls.
I see. Interesting. And then I'm guessing that this is for the camera, and then when you switch it to the phone here, the phone symbol, that's for the phone recording audio. Is that correct? In basic terms?
I actually don't know the difference between those two switches. I tried it with... It doesn't work with cameras. That's all I know.
Have you tried it with your phone?
No, I haven't tried it with my phone yet.
What is that 48 volts?
This is phantom power. Essentially, if you have a microphone that doesn't have built-in power, or or doesn't use an external battery,
Yeah.
you switch this on, and you get a little red light. It's a danger light, essentially, and, along with your green on light, stating that it's upping the power from the 9-volt battery to 48 volts.
Right.
So it'll power any non-powered microphones.
And so basically that's pretty bad if you try that on what we have.
Yes, if
right
you're if you're using just a standard microphone with battery, it can short the microphone and damage it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, and there's also a headphone jack, it looks like. So just a headphone jack right about there. And so is that for leveling audio and making sure that sounds crisp and so good?
Yes and no. Essentially, in my experience, I'm not an expert with this machine yet,
Yeah.
but because there's no leveling for the output, all you get is the raw sound that you're getting through the preamp and the mic. So everything sounds really loud and hissy, and it just sounds unusable. Like if you were to get
crap.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I would never ever use this if that's what it produced.
Okay. But it doesn't.
But you can get a preview of what you're going to hear. Generally, it's like a general. Okay, yeah, I can still hear the dialogue.
Oh, okay, so even through that crappy sort of hiss and grain and what other noises it produces during that preview, you can still hear the dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nicely.
But we have to stress that even like when you're doing post and you're editing it, the audio sounds very, very good. There's pretty much no hiss from what we can tell. At least when you bump up the gain, you can certainly hear a little bit of it. But at least with what we're recording at, the audio levels we're recording at, it's pretty. It's a pretty nice, handy machine. How much was that, by the way?
It's advertised as $99 US, so like 140 Canadian.
So $100,000 in Canadian money.
Yeah.
With our exchange rate. Yeah.
So yeah, $99.
$99
or 140 Canadian.
And then I guess that was around. Well, I'm pointing at our Rode microphone. Sorry, you can't see that. But that's our Rode microphone. I believe that was $150. So if you combine those two totals, you're looking around $250, probably to $300 if you're looking for a really good mic and preamp.
But that being said, even the cheaper version of that microphone still sounds magnificent with this preamp.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have one of those, so we can't.
We can't test it.
We can't. I can't back up my statement.
I fired ya.
I fired ya.
So many guests here tonight. Owen Wilson, the guy who played Moriarty. Michael Caine.
Benedict Cumberbatch?
Eggs Benedict Cumberbuns.
Yep.
Anyway.
Alright.
And then, I was going to say something else. Of course I forgot. But basically, what would you say for, guerrilla filmmakers with no budget? What would you say to them when they're like, I want really good audio that does not hiss, and I want to stay around, I'd say $150. Is that doable? Or what would you say the price range is to have good microphones, good preamp, good audio at a reasonable price?
I'd say you're looking at, I don't know, with this, it's completely doable. Maybe 150, that's going to cover, this machine, depending on where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Calling it a machine, it's a gadget, really. Yeah, it's doable. I think you're looking at $250 if you're going to go with a cheap microphone and this. But I'd say invest in it early on because it'll make a huge difference overall.
Yeah. I believe Rocket Jump Film School did this very interesting video, and it was about what would take the audience more out of a story. Bad visuals, so a bad picture where things are grainy, bad resolution, noise, or bad audio. And they found more often than not that bad audio is what takes audiences out of good short films. So if you have good audio, you can have them invest in your story, and then they can have more enjoyment out of it. See, if you start up a short film, they're like, oh, that image looks really nice, that performance is really good. Then you hear the audio of, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah.
So invest in a good mic, invest in a good preamp, and all your problems will be solved, and then you'll make good films for the rest of your life, right?
No. takes hard work and dedication, something that we do not have.
Oh right, we forgot to close the video.
Also, a couple things I wanted to mention. It's got 6 inputs.
I thought we already covered that, so is what it is. Right, we could just switch this back in the timeline.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
Include this dialogue.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Okay, so let's
Okay.
cut. Let's film that section.
All right.
Okay.
We're back.
Oh, Ryan, you're such a riot.
You're such a film riot.